Hello again, and welcome back to the InTouch Machine Edition training video series. This is the Active Objects 2 video, and this course you're going to understand how to use some more of the active objects. And in this course, when you're finished, you should be able to understand the push button, the checkbox, and the radio button objects. So what are we going to cover? We're going to cover the push button object and how it's different from the just standard button object. And then the checkbox and the fact that you can check or uncheck any of the checkboxes. And then the radio button object, they're essentially mutually exclusive. And most of you have used radio buttons and checkboxes in other applications or on websites, so you should be able to understand that. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and continue to work with the training video that we started back with the screen groups where we built navigation, main, and header. And since we've added the active objects in the last video, and now we're going to go back to the navigation and we're going to add a second button down here for active objects 2. I think that the screen was getting a little bit crowded, so we'll do the next couple of videos on separate screens. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the template and we're going to do a save as here, and we'll save this as active objects objects 2, and then we can go back to the navigation. We can copy this button down by holding my control key down after I've selected it and just drag it down. And I'm going to change the label or the caption on this, so I'll go back to the button here and we'll just call this active objects 2, and then we'll go back to the command animation here and tell it to go to the active objects 2 screen. And I'm not typing that in so that I don't accidentally mistype it, fat finger it, and cause us to go to a screen that doesn't exist. So I'm going to save the changes here. Okay, now I have this screen, and what we're going to do is go back to graphics, and we're going to cover these 3 active objects here: the push button, the checkbox, and the radio button. In the last video we covered the text box and button object, and now I'm going to cover the push button object. Now the push button is a little bit different than the button object. The button object really kind of follows standard Windows type buttons and uses, where the push button object was meant to more act like a real world industrial automation type push button, where we have choices of momentary, maintained, and latched, normally open, normally closed, and then we have a configuration field here where we can actually set the colors that it changes, the caption or the text when it's in the on open or closed condition. You can see here that there's a little rectangle sectioning off the open section, and here's one for the closed section. So what we're going to do first is just a standard momentary button in a normally open type configuration, and I'm going to put a tag in here. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is let's create a tag just maybe called start, and I don't have that tag in my system yet, so I'm just going to say yeah, go ahead and create that. And we're going to create that as a Boolean type tag. And again, this is going to be a momentary, so what that means is when I press it, it will write a 1 to the tag, and when I release it, it will write a 0. So let's then go into the configuration, and let's say change the caption to start, and maybe we want the same text on the button when it's pressed, or maybe it's started. Your choice, however you want that to work. I'm just going to keep that same text on there. And it will be green when it's open, it will be red when it's closed, it will write a 0 when you release it or when you open it, and when it's closed it'll write a 1. You can change the fonts and whether or not the button itself blinks or the text blinks, and you can change the alignments, and we'll get into this button color in a minute. But that's the basic idea of how that button works. So let's go ahead and put just a piece of text that we learned how to do this in the last video. So I'm going to put just a £sign on there. And in fact, what we'll do is we'll call this start, and put a single £sign, which will give us the value of a 0 or a 1. And we'll tie that to that tag, and we'll go here into browse, look at that start tag, and so now we'll be able to see the value of that tag when we press this button here. So now what I'm going to do is save this screen, close the screen, and then I'm going to connect up to my HMI that I have running. Now, for those of you who have been watching the videos very closely, I've changed the PC that I'm connected to and tried to mimic exactly what I had there before, but you might see some screen changes on that HMI. So once I bring that into view, you might notice a little bit of changes there, but I tried to duplicate and keep everything the same. So now I'm connected to that device, and what you can see here is I have this here, so I've got a connection. I'm connected to that, and I'll bring this out of view. And now I'll go back to the project, and my project is already downloaded, but I'm going to go ahead and download it again now with the new screen and the database changes that I've got going on there. And then I'll go ahead and kick that off and run it. At this point, I can bring this down here into view, and I should be able to go to my Active Objects 2 screen, and I can press and hold that, and notice it writes a 1, and when I release it, it writes a 0. So that's the momentary functionality. I press, it writes the 1. When I release, notice the color changes. Notice the wording here is staying the same. That's because I did that on purpose. If I then go and change, let's stay connected here, and let's go back to the Active Objects 2 screen, go in here and change this to started maybe. So this is start and this is started. And again, you can label that or word that any way that you want to. If I then save this screen, I can automatically download that. And now when I press this, notice it says started, and when I release it, it says start. So you can see the difference between those two configuration areas here versus here. All right, so you can have multiple lines of text on there. And in fact, I can embed that start tag right on here. So instead of putting that extra little piece of text, I can put inside of curly brackets that tag, and then I'll just copy it over to the closed condition. So we don't need that extra piece of text over here. So now when I save that and download it, now when we bring this into view, you'll see that it shows that value right on there, and I can no longer need that if I don't need it. All right, so now what we're going to do is copy this over. I held down my control key while I dragged that. First I selected it, then I held down my control key, and then I drug a copy over. Alternatively, you can do copy and paste or control C and control V if you wanted to. Now I'm going to change this into a maintained, and a maintained is essentially a toggle. And I'm just going to keep everything the same there. Maybe I'll just leave that. So that will be the maintained there. And now when I save this and download it, I'm going to have an extra button here. And again, the first one is momentary, so I press it. I'm still pressing my mouse. When I release, it writes a 0. And now with a toggle, I press and I release, and it still keeps that 1. I have to press it again to get it to toggle back to the other state. So now the third type of button here is the latched. So what I'm going to do is copy this one. So again, I'll select it, copy it over here, and change this to latched. Now before I select this, notice here that this reset field is grayed out. It's grayed out until I select the latched type, and then we have to use this reset field in order to unlatch it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another button down here. First of all, I'm going to create a tag called start reset, and that will allow this this button to reset. And then start reset doesn't exist. I'm going to make that a Boolean. And now what I'll do is I'll put another push button underneath here, and I'll kind of keep it kind of in line here so that it looks like it's related. And we'll call this reset. And put that same text over here. And go back. And again, this will be a momentary, and this is going to change that tag start reset, and that will unlatch that. And okay, so that should work for that button. And let's go ahead and give this a try here. Now, because I do have changes to the tag database, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop that. I'm going to download the whole project again, and then rerun it just to make sure that all those changes take place. All right, so now what I'll do is I'll bring this into view, change screens. So now again, just to walk through this, I can press and release. I can press and release, press and release. And now this one, I can press and I can keep clicking, 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 and it doesn't change until I hit the reset. Then I can make the change again. Now that reset doesn't have to come from another button. That could come from a PLC value. It could come from an input on the PLC, a button on the PLC, or some condition. So really it just has to toggle that tag, and wherever that tag gets its information from, it doesn't care. So that's how that interlocks there. So let me move this off the screen and then go back into Objects 2. Now let's talk about a couple of different variations here. Let me copy this momentary button down, and what we're going to do is we're going to change this from normally open to normally closed. So what that will do is kind of swap these conditions so that it will normally be closed, and when you press it, it will write the open condition. So it's going to be kind of like wired in reverse. So if I save this and download it again, now you'll see that that one is kind of the opposite of this one. And so since it's normally closed, what I can do is I can press this toggle to set that, and when I press this, you can see that it does the reverse state of it. So because I have all of these tied to the same tag, hopefully that's pretty clear. So this normal condition is the closed condition. When I press it, it writes the open condition, then it writes the closed condition when I release it. And I can change that back up by going ahead and pressing that one. So another variation of this button is here under Config. In fact, let me just copy the first momentary button over here, and here under momentary, actually here under Config, we have this effect, which is the 3D effect. And now our default is this 3D effect, but there is another effect here called floating. And this is a little bit more simple looking, a little less resource intensive. And if you are downloading to an HMI or a PC that's maybe a low end, low on resources, or not so much horsepower, you can use this type of button, which will take less computing power to draw and to work with. So that's another variation, but it behaves the same way. So for example, if I save this and download this and then go back to my runtime, you can see that it behaves the same way as this does. Now notice this, that if I'm clicking on this button, this one is changing red because I'm pressing it, but notice that this one doesn't, or none of these other ones change color based on when I'm pressing this. And here's why. Because there's a separate field associated with the indicator. Now this is kind of the feedback or the light that it is actually working with. So for example, in this button here, if I put the same tag here under the indicator, and now when I save this and run it, now I did that on this floating one here. When I press this one, you can see that the color changes over here, but when I press this one doesn't change. That's because I didn't fill out that indicator field. Where would you use this? You might use this to, let's say that you've used this button to start a motor, and maybe you have another tag that says that it's at the desired revolutions per minute. So once it gets up to the RPMs that it's supposed to be, then that will change color. Okay, so that's another opportunity there, a way that you might use that. Now another look and feel for this, if I copy this down, and instead of making this floating, let's say I make this 3D, I have this choice for this rectangle, but instead I have an opportunity to add the indicator as a separate little box there. So here you can see that the button color is blue, the legend plate color is gray, and then I have my indicator colors now are represented by those. Now I have to change this to get some of my text to fit on there, but now you can see that indicator is there. And what we'll do is I'll go ahead and make that a separate tag there. So that indicator is maybe I started to type this before, so I guess I'll use this RPM. I don't have that tag yet, so I'll go ahead and make that a Boolean. And then what I'll do is I'll just add a button over here just to simulate that coming in. And we'll say that this is a maintained, and because I don't want to type it, I'll cursor off and then double click on that field and say at RPMs, and then we will go ahead and change its configuration at RPM, and then keep this close by so later on we'll remember that that's related to that. And then what we should be able to do is save this, which will automatically download it since I'm still connected to my runtime here. And because I added a tag, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it. I'm going to download it again. And you can see it only takes a few seconds for a project this size. And then I'm going to rerun it. And then what I'll do is I'll pull it in here. And now you can see that this button is toggling the tag, but notice that the indicator is not toggling, and that is changed by when this gets to RPMs. You can see that that's different than that value there. So you can have those independent, or if you put the same tag in there, they could be tied to the same thing. So I could put start over here as well. Disable, you can put a tag in there or a constant, and when that expression evaluates to true, then it will disable or gray that out. In a similar fashion, you can put a number in here, 0 to 255, that represents the security level. And we'll talk more about this when we get to security later on in different other videos. But that will I'll gray that button out and not allow it to work. We have some other things when we get more into the animations where we can actually cause this whole object to disappear, maybe if you're not at the right security level. So not even present the operator with the ability to see the button, so they don't even know it's there. Let's take this one step further and look at this key section here. So for example, if I take this first momentary button, and what I want to show you is the drop-down list here. So this represents function keys that might be on an industrial computer or on your keyboard. Most keyboards only go up to F12. If you're using F11 through F24, consult the manufacturer for the definition of those buttons, because most believe the keyboard's definition only goes up to F12. Some manufacturers actually define F11 through F20 as Shift F1 through Shift F10, and then some of them may use Alt and then Control as modifiers above that. So you might want to check with the manufacturer to see how they define those function keys. You also have other keys on your keyboard, but then if you want just, let's say, a letter key, so I'm going to put in the letter A here, just type that in, then this key will then drive that. And you can also modify this. So for example, Control and Shift and the letter A will allow you to use that key. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to save this, download it. And now when I bring this into view here, I should be able to, on my keyboard, hit Control, Shift, and A, and that acts as a mouse click. So notice my mouse is not on the button, and I'm hitting Control and Shift and A. Now, of course, guess what? That's never enough for some people. So we have not only these modifiers, but you can click on this little browse button here and choose not only the letter A key in this case, but I can say the left shift and the right control and then either alt key. Believe it or not, your keyboards actually can tell the difference between the left and the right, control, alt, or shift. So you can really get into some interesting situations there depending on what keypads or keyboards are available or input devices are available on the different computers that you have access to. So I'm going to put this back to, let's see, we'll just go to left or right on both of those. Let's see, so that checked that, so let's uncheck that. So it's Shift, Control, and the letter A. All right. So let's see, did I cover everything that I wanted to? I think I did. Oh, notice that the field here is labeled tag/expression. So not only is this a tag, but that can be an expression as well in certain circumstances. So That can get you in there. And this e-signature we'll cover more when we get into security. Oh, you know, one of the things that I did miss in the earlier objects video, what I'll cover now is this hint field. This is kind of like a tooltip. When you hover your mouse over the object, it can give you a reminder. So let's say I want to remind myself that this is Control and Shift and the letter A key when I hover my mouse over. So I'll do CTRL hyphen Shift and then hyphen, then the letter A. So now when I download this and view it on my HMI, I should be able to cursor over this, and maybe I have to stop my project and restart it or download it. Let me give that a try. Let's see. Home, stop. We'll re-download it and then run it. And then bring it back here into view, go to active objects 2, and when I cursor my mouse over that, let's see, it's not showing me my hint, so I'll go give that a quick troubleshoot and then see why it's not doing that. So I'll be right back in just a second. Okay, so I guess that's all I wanted to show you for the push button object. So let's move on to the checkbox and radio button. So let's I've got some space down here, so let's go ahead and put the checkbox object or a few of these things on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make, notice that this gives me a rectangle that I can draw. I'm going to make this about 1 character high and not very long, because I'm just going to put a few kind of small words in here. And notice the word check appears in here by default. Now what you don't want is you don't want this thing to be really tall, because it'll be that area there that allows you to check, and you don't want it to be small enough where it cuts off the text either. So just kind of a happy medium right in there. Now the first one of these, we're going to choose maybe different pizza toppings. So I'm going to go back to the text, and we'll call this pizza toppings. And the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to make what might be everybody's favorite on a pizza is pepperoni. And the tag associated with that is we're going to call this pepperoni selected. Notice that I uppercased the letter S and I don't have any spaces. The true value for this will be 1. So the caption will be pepperoni. Pepperoni selected will be the tag, and when I clicked off of that, it prompted me for this. I'm going to say yes, I want to create that. I'm going to make that a Boolean, and then we'll leave everything else the same way that it is. And what I'll do is I will let me show you another feature here. I'm going to double click on this, and what happened was I clicked off of this and the properties menu went away. Well, if I want that to stay in place, I can click this little push pin here, and that will stay on top all the time and not disappear. So I'm going to select pepperoni. I'm going to copy this down here. Now notice that I have these apart such that they're not overlapping, so you want to make sure that they're not overlapping so you don't accidentally touch those with the same mouse press or finger. And then here the next thing that we're going to choose is let's say cheese, and we'll have another tag called cheese selected, and we'll say okay. Since cheese selected doesn't exist, we're going to make that a Boolean. Notice that I tabbed down twice. I'm not even using my mouse, and you can see how the word integer is kind of bounded by a rectangle there. I'm just going to hit the letter B on my keyboard to go to Boolean. Since OK is highlighted, I can just hit the OK key or the Enter key on my keyboard, and I don't even have to really move my mouse. And then we'll do that same thing again. I'll copy this down here, and we'll change this line to mushrooms. And then we'll go change the tag to be mushrooms selected. And this is a very basic pizza place, so we're only going to allow cheese, pepperoni, and mushrooms as options for our pizzas. So now we need a way to display that, and because I have this push pin here, that's not going away, so I'm going to unpin that. And I can get rid of that. So now we need a way to display this. Now what I'm going to do is start to dabble in a little bit of the animations here. Now I realize we haven't done the animations yet, but I'll start to show you how those are used. So I'm going to start with a little rectangle here and put a caption on this of pepperoni and say OK. And now while that is still selected, I'm going to choose this visibility position animation. Now in here, there's really two separate animations. It's either visibility or it's position. And this horizontal and vertical section is the positioning, where this visibility is a kind of show or hide. So I'm going to show this when the tag pepperoni selected is true. So when that is true, it will show this. Otherwise, it will hide this. Now I could, maybe first instinct is to say something like pepperoni selected is equal to 1. But you don't need to do that because pepperoni selected will evaluate to true or false by itself. So you don't need that extra little step in there. Okay, so I'm going to resize this to make this as efficient as possible. But also note here that if I go back to my rectangle, and I go into my caption field, I have enable translation turned on. So depending on the wording that you have in here, you might want to make sure that you leave enough room for various languages if other languages that you're going to use are longer or shorter. So we have that option in there as well. So I'm going to, again, this will be the visibility that will come on when pepperoni is selected. And so then what I'm going to do is copy this over by holding down my control key, and then I'm going to change this to, I'll open up the browse, this will be cheese is selected, and then I'll change the rectangle, the caption to be cheese. And then I will go ahead and make another one over here for mushrooms. And let's see if I gave myself enough room. I did, fortunately. I don't have to resize all of those. And let's go back into the visibility position and open up the browse, choose mushrooms selected. And now the way that this should work is because they are all tied to their own individual tags, I can actually select them independent of each other. So let's go ahead and save and close this screen. Because I made changes to the database, I'm going to stop the project. I'm going to download again, and then I'm going to rerun the project. Let me go back to it here off screen and grab it into play here. And now I'm going to go to the Active Objects 2, and you can see that since none of them are selected, none of the rectangles show up. I click on the checkbox, and I can see pepperoni is selected, I can see cheese is selected, and I can see mushroom is selected. I should be able to check and uncheck those in any combination and have the visibility animation show those various statuses. So there I can build a very simple pizza, and I guess if you wanted to, you could actually draw cheese and pepperoni and mushrooms on a little pizza and show those in a different way if you wanted to get into that, be adventuresome in your graphics. So that's the basic configurations of checkboxes. So now let's go on and do the radio button. So let me get this out of here, and then next to this on the Active Objects 2 screen, I'm going to go over here and do the radio buttons. Now the radio buttons are different from checkboxes. Most people have used radio buttons and checkboxes, and the radio buttons are similar, the fact that you can select them, but they're a little bit different because they are typically tied together and they're mutually exclusive, so you can only check one of them at a time. So here what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this piece of text over and change this. Instead of pizza toppings, we're going to select speed for the machine, let's say. And that's a fairly common thing to do on an HMI. And of course I would probably segment these a little bit better and block up the screen a little bit, but I think you get the idea. So here we're going to do several things. We're going to tie this first radio button to the speed that's going to be fast, and the tag will be speed. And then the value, so I haven't created that. Now in this case, unlike the checkboxes where they're each tied to their own Boolean tag, we're going to make this all of these tied to the same tag called speed, and in this case, instead of Boolean, it's going to be an integer, so we can set values in there. So I'm going to make that tag called speed an integer, and here what we're going to do is we'll set fast at 3. Eventually we'll get to medium will be 2, slow will be 1, and off will be represented by a 0. So let's go ahead and create those. So what I'll do is I will just copy this down and copy it down again. And now I'm going to show you another little tool, that another feature to make this a little bit easier for you to use. So I'm just trying to make sure that these don't overlap. You know what, that top one is a little bit tall, so what I want to do is I want to resize this before I go ahead and copy these, and make sure that I don't have just a hugely tall object there. So I'm going to copy these down and try to evenly space them. And if you don't have them evenly spaced, you can position those with the mouse or use the formatting tool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and notice that this properties box now has me at that radio button level here. And I can change this from fast to medium. And I'm going to keep the same tag called speed, but I'm going to change this. Whoops! I'm going to change this to 2, and I don't have to close that properties box. I can just click on the next object, and now I'm going to change this to slow. I'm going to change the tag to 1, and I'm going to go down to the last one. Again, not closing the properties box. It's just a really nice feature, so I don't have to keep diving in and diving out of menus. This one will be off, and here the speed will be 0. Now, myself, I can't necessarily talk and type very well, so I just want to go back and check. So here's fast, speed 3, medium, the tag is speed 2, then slow and 1, off and 0. So I've got that all configured correctly. So now what I'm going to do is give myself some statuses, very similar to how I did this these rectangles over here. So what I'll do is just add a rectangle down here, and put in here the word fast, and then let's see, medium is probably the longest one that I have, but I can probably get that to fit something like that. So we'll do fast, we'll do medium, and slow, and last but not least is off. And there's various other ways to do this. I'm just starting to introduce to you some of the animations. Okay, so here I have just the rectangles that I've drawn, and what I probably should have done is applied the animation, the visibility animation to this before I copied it. I'll go ahead and do that now. I'll apply the visibility here. So when speed, so I'm not tying it, unlike I did with the pepperoni, cheese, and mushrooms where I had individual tags there. Now I have to tie this to speed, and I do actually have to put a conditional in here. So I have to say when speed equals 3, that will be fast. And because I know I'm going to do this again, I'm going to copy this and click on this medium one, apply the visibility animation, come in here, paste that, and change this to be 2. Again, apply this position. This will be 1, and the off condition, apply that animation. Visibility will be when speed equals 0. So okay, so all of that should be okay. Again, I'm going to go ahead and save my screen here, and then stop it because I made some changes to the tag database. I'm going to re-download it, and then run it again. And pull that back into view here. Go to my active objects too. So now you should see that it's off by default. That tag started, speed tag started at 0, so it's off. I can go to slow, I can go to medium, I can go to fast. Now notice I don't have to check the actual circle. I can actually click anywhere on where that text is to give me that. So independent checkboxes here, mutually exclusive radio buttons like so, and that covers the checkboxes and the radio buttons. I do have a couple more quick things that I'd like to show you, so I'm going to pull this out of view here, open up the active objects too. In both the checkboxes and the radio buttons, Under Advanced, there is another selection here called Push Like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this over here and double click on that, go into the Advanced and change this to Push Like. And when you do that, then I have now a fill color here, and that becomes almost like a button. That's very similar to, like, for example, if you took a look at the check boxes, this is kind of a toggle for each one of those, and it's very similar to how these animations act and react. So I can click on one of them and it stays like this, it's pushed, and then I click it again and it unchecks it, so to speak. So there's that. So that, I believe, let me take a look here, is all that I wanted to cover on the push button, the checkbox, and the radio button. And if you need more information, consult the help. And as always, you can go to our online resources where you can find here at these various links. And we thank you for attending today's video and viewing today's video, I should say. And hopefully you learned something. Thanks. Have a great day.